case ID 21. So we went over the consent form and the introduction. Do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. So I would like to start with your past experiences with birth control. So for the purpose of this interview, when I refer to birth control, I mean any type of method you use to prevent pregnancy. Is that clear?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what do you think of when you think of birth control?
I just think about like preventing having kids.
Okay. Tell me, how have you decided what types of birth control to use in the past?
Well, I don't like implants and stuff like that, so I just went with the shot.
Okay. What don't you like about implants?
Some of them have to be like surgically removed.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I don't like surgery.
Okay. So you picked Depo before.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you pick Depo versus the other types that aren't surgery?
Well, it was like once every 3 months, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And my doctor was like convincing, so I just got Depo.
Okay. All right. Have you used any other types of birth control before?
No.
Okay. So just using the Depo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. On a different note, do you think you can control if you can get pregnant in the future?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Why do you say that?
Condoms, birth control.
Okay. And tell me about your thoughts about birth control for after the abortion, but before you came to see a healthcare provider.
I was never against it. Like, I always think it's a good idea.
Okay. So before you came in to talk to anyone, were you planning on using anything in particular?
Yeah, I was on birth control.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was on Depo, but then I stopped.
Okay. You stopped. Okay. Did you think after the abortion that you were going to go back on it? Or did you plan on something different or not even think about it at that point?
I stopped thinking about it for a little while, but
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm going to get back on Depo.
Okay. So when you came to the doctor initially, before you actually talked to someone, what was your game plan for after the abortion?
To get back on birth control.
Okay. Okay. So thanks for all that. Now I'm going to shift and talk about when you came here for care. Tell me about your birth control counseling during your recent experience here.
I liked it, and because I'm only 18,
Mm-hmm.
they were helping me see like what would happen in the future if I had a baby or if I didn't have a baby.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Okay. What are the first things that you think of when you think back to your counseling?
I just think about how I got the abortion.
I see. Okay. Now I'm going to ask you a couple of deeper questions about the healthcare experience. So we'll start with the first visit that you came regarding this abortion. How did birth control counseling start?
Well, when I came for one day. I came on a Tuesday.
Okay.
So it started with like what birth control I was on.
Mm-hmm.
And that, like, how I got pregnant or how far along I was, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So they were asking about what birth control you were on before,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Or if I was even on birth control.
Okay. And how did they talk about birth control after the abortion?
Just briefly, they asked me if I wanted to talk about it or not, or if I wanted to get it or not. It wasn't really like enforced.
Okay. So how did they start the conversation? What did they say?
Do you want to get on birth control?
Okay.
Here,
Mm-hmm.
now, or later?
Okay. And what happened after that?
I just said later, and we didn't really talk about it again.
Okay. What were your expectations about talking about birth control during the visit?
I thought that we were kind of going to talk about it like regardless.
Okay. Why do you think so?
Because again, I'm young and like I came for an abortion, so that's something that can prevent me from getting pregnant.
Okay. So you think that when you come for an abortion, the doctors will always bring up birth control?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. So how do you feel about your provider bringing it up?
I felt like comfortable because I already had the talk before.
Okay. When did you have the talk before?
When I first got on birth control.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How did you feel about the decision to go on something later?
I was kind of iffy about it because I didn't know like if I was gonna be sexually active or not.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it was kind of shaky.
Okay. Do you feel like you were freely able to make that decision?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if you wanted to be on birth control, do you feel like you'd be able to freely choose which one you wanted?
Yeah.
Okay. Why do you say that?
They tell me the options, and I could just like pick the best one. And sometimes, well, the first time, she gave me 2 days to come back. Well, to think about it and then come back and tell her which one I wanted and get it that day.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Tell me about the balance in the conversation. Was one person more in charge than the other person?
Yeah, I was kind of just listening.
Okay. How do you feel about that?
It's kind of educating. Either way, you have to listen. Well, you don't have to, but you kind of have to.
Uh-huh.
And at the end, they ask if, you have questions, but they give you so much information that you don't really have to ask.
Okay. All right. Particularly about birth control, do you think that conversation was equal?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did all of the methods feel equally available to you?
Somewhat. I feel like some of them were more talked about than the others.
Okay. Any particular ones that they talked about more?
Depo and the implant in your arm.
In the arm. Okay. And why do you say they talked about them more?
Like they gave more information about it. Because I know there's another shot and like a different implant.
Okay.
Like the one that goes in your vagina.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But we didn't really talk about those.
Okay. So you talked mainly about Depo and the implant in your arm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How do you feel about talking more about those than the other options?
Well, when they talk about it, they say like those are the best ones. So I don't really feel uncomfortable. I think it's fine.
Okay. All right. I was going to ask you, did you feel that all methods were equally encouraged to you?
Mm-mm.
No. Would you say the same thing or anything different?
The same thing.
Okay. Do you think there's a reason why they did that?
Probably because like they say it's they're the best ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. What, if anything, limited your choice in method?
If anything did, I think it'll just be that they didn't talk about the other one so much.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But do you think you would have wanted them to talk about other things?
Just so I can like get the feel of them all.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Tell me about the good things you came away from the conversation with.
Good ways to prevent being pregnant.
Okay.
So I didn't have to do the abortion again.
And now, what were the negative things that you felt from the conversation?
Just a little push to get the birth control because they asked me like a lot of times.
Okay. When you say a lot of times, what do you mean?
Like every time I entered the room or I went to a new room, they asked me like 3 times.
Okay. But whether or not you were picking birth control?
Mm-hmm.
Did they ask? It's okay. Did they ask about whether or not you were picking a particular type or just any birth control?
Any birth control.
Okay. All right. How did that make you feel?
Just a little uncomfortable because it was like right after the procedure or right before. So the only thing I was thinking about was the abortion.
Okay. All right. How easy was it to talk to them about your birth control concerns?
I didn't really have concerns.
Okay. Did you talk to them about, you were mentioning earlier about how you didn't want something implanted, like you didn't want something in you. Did you mention that to them?
I just said like Depo. That's the only thing.
Okay. What do you think would have happened if you told them about that?
I think they would have told me stuff like positive reasons to get it.
Okay.
So that I wouldn't be nervous about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you think your provider heard what you were saying about what you wanted in birth control?
Yeah.
Okay. Why do you say that?
Well, when I answered the questions, she would ask them again just to like make sure that I knew what I wanted.
Okay. How did the provider seem during your discussion?
She seemed engaged in the conversation.
Okay. Anything else?
Like she was glad to talk to me about it. Like it didn't bother her.
Mm-hmm. About birth control or about the abortion?
Birth control.
Okay. How did you seem once you made your decision about what you wanted?
A little like confused or like discouraged. Well, not really discouraged, but like, yeah, confused because I didn't want to be put on birth control, but I got an abortion.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think she was thinking?
Contradicted myself.
Okay, all right. So why do you think she was confused?
It was kind of contradicting. Like I didn't want a child, but I didn't want birth control. Like I didn't want to prevent that from happening.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How did the conversation with your provider that day affect the way you made your decision?
It didn't really affect it. The only thing that was like affecting it was me.
Okay. Do you feel like you left that situation with the right decision for you?
Yeah.
Why did you say that?
'Cause like only I know when I'm gonna be sexually active.
Okay. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Do you feel like you were encouraged toward any form of birth control?
Yeah.
Which ones?
Depo and the implant.
Okay. Do you feel like you were encouraged toward any birth control? Like you had to leave with something? Or do you not feel that way?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you feel like you were persuaded against any types of birth control?
Just the ones that they didn't really speak about.
Okay. And do you feel like they were persistent regarding any one type?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which types?
Depot.
Okay. Um, and then it seemed like after that conversation, you decided that you didn't want anything right after the procedure. It seemed like you had a procedure. Is that right?
Yeah.
And did you have it the same day as when you came in? Okay. Like you mentioned, some women get more counseling at the time of the procedure. How did birth control come up around the actual procedure?
It was like after I got an ultrasound and after I chose which procedure I was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So like after we spoke about getting ways to get rid of the baby.
Mm-hmm. When you went over to get the procedure, did they bring it up again?
Mm-hmm.
How did it come up?
I was just sitting to get in the IV and they were on the computer and they just asked if I wanted birth control before I leave or if I didn't.
Mm-hmm. What'd you say?
No.
Okay. How did that go?
It was fine.
Okay. Do you feel like there was anything good or bad about that conversation?
No.
Okay. And at that time, do you feel like you were encouraged toward or against any types of birth control?
No.
Okay. And then usually right before the procedure begins, they may mention birth control. Did that come up in your case?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How did birth control come up?
Kind of the same way. Like I was switching from the chair
Mm-hmm.
to the wheelchair
Mm-hmm.
to go, and they just asked me again if I wanted it or if I didn't.
Okay. And what did you say?
No.
And how do you think that went?
Fine.
Okay. And that before you left, how did you feel about your birth control choice?
I was pretty confident in it, but I was leaning more towards getting it sooner than later.
Okay. Why do you think you felt that way?
Just to prevent pregnancy so that I didn't have to do the procedure again.
Okay. But it sounds like you were confident when you left that you were happy that you didn't get anything.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to spend just a little bit of time talking about the other people in your healthcare team and see how your experience is with them. Other than doctors or nurses, did anyone else talk to you about birth control while you were here?
My boyfriend.
Okay. What did he tell you?
He was just saying how I should be on it, but I think every boy says that to their girlfriend. So.
Okay. Did anyone else that works here talk to you about birth control? Like the front desk or the technician that took your blood pressure?
No.
Okay. And is there anything about the way our clinic is set up that affected your birth control choice?
No.
Okay. All right. Looking back at your overall experience about birth control counseling around this event, how's the experience made you feel?
Comfortable. Like it makes me feel like I can come in and talk about it whenever
Okay.
I choose.
All right. And is there anything else about your experience that you'd like to share that we haven't talked about?
No.
Okay. If you knew someone else that was going through the same thing you went through, would you want us to change anything?
Maybe instead of asking if they want birth control or not, telling them the different types and explaining them all.
Okay. Why do you think that'd be helpful?
Because sometimes people have misconceptions about birth control,
Okay.
and that could help.
Okay. So it sounds like not asking, but just telling them all the information, and then going from there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else that you think would be helpful?
No.
Okay.